You mentioned, being scared of Coach Lane. I'm curious how you reacted to that training environment. Looking back at those Andover teams, not
Yeah.
only, Rafi's a year ahead of you and he won the state championship in the 50 as a freshman, but you have upperclassmen on those teams, and Mark D'Erico, right? And Sam
Yep.
Kim.
Yep.
I mean, some really, really talented guys that were in that
Yeah.
program as well. It wasn't just Coach Lane that was daunting. I mean, the training environment had to be incredible.
Yeah, no, that's right. It was, and that was obviously part of my I'm getting in lane two because I was scared. And some of those guys I knew because we swam on the same club program together. So I knew I could probably hang with them, but some I didn't because they were from different club programs, and I didn't want to sort of step out of line or anything like that. But it was a great group of guys, absolutely, and super, super supportive. Um, and definitely pushed. What's so interesting I thought about my time at Andover is, so you're right, when I was young, yeah, Mark Drico, who was sort of their distance swimmer, and I started as sort of a 500, 200 guy. So he was definitely the one I was trying to hang with, right? When it came to speed, Rafi and Sam on the sprints, but my main training partner was Mark, and I think for him, I was probably his second. So he'd go first and I'd be second, and I was just trying to keep up with him. Once he graduated, and I was sort of the lead, sort of middle distance, upper distance swimmer on that team, there was a guy older than me who wasn't a great swimmer, but Hank Weed, just a total click, just a total clown. But I actually think one of my sort of the things I'm most proud of all of my swimming career, and I don't think he cares at all, but that summer where Hank was or that senior season when Hank was a senior and I was probably a sophomore, I want to say, because that was state championships at Michigan State. Yes, I think that's right. I was a sophomore. Hank was a senior, is my guess. So he was my training partner. It was me and him. I was going first, and he was behind me. And I mean, just classic goofball kind of guy, but he made it to the finals at states in the 500. And then I don't remember if he got sixth or whatever, or fifth, but it was like, I didn't even care that I won. I wanted to see where he finished, and he had, the swim of his life. And I don't know if he ever got in a pool again, but that was awesome. Like, that was so much fun for me to see that, and to sort of realize it's because, I'd been forcing him to drag along with me for that whole season, and to see it sort of pay off. And not that he cared, but it was that was a lot of fun. And I don't know if Mark had the same reaction watching me coming up. I don't even remember what I did or where I placed my freshman year, but I think I swam pretty well. And I suspect he sort of took a bit of pride in that as well, because it was fun to watch those guys progress.
I bet it meant more to Hank Weed wherever you are than you think it did.
Yeah, he was a blast. That was one of the most fun sort of training years I've ever had. So we worked hard, but it was fun. Yeah.
Well, I had to laugh as you were talking here. I was thumbing through some of your results, and for a guy that tried to slip into lane two at the first practice, you finished third in the 200 free at the state meet your freshman year in 142.9. So they, unfortunately, Coach Lane found you and moved you over at some point, obviously.
That's right. That's right. You know what? That is probably when it dawned on me, like, yeah, okay, I'm actually probably have a chance to be pretty good. Like, I think that's right. I did get third. I don't think I expected that. And I think, that, like, holy crap, Mike Lane knows what he's talking about. Like, if it hadn't hit home, it was then, because that probably didn't come out of nowhere, but it was not just the result, but the time. I suspect, like, that was, yeah, I definitely remember that now that you mentioned it. And sort of had me think about myself differently. I just think when you're eighth grade going, and it's funny because my son is now a sophomore going into his sophomore year. So he's starting to have these realizations as well. Last year he was just kind of oblivious and going through it, and obviously got disrupted from COVID, but coming back now into his sophomore year, he's starting to realize, oh wait, I'm actually pretty good at this, and can sort of approach it differently maybe than he had before. So that's certainly how I felt after that first state meet. Yeah.
You might disagree with me, but just in studying your times a little bit, it seems that your sophomore and senior years are really massive years for you. I'm sure the junior year you were probably looking for a little bit more, but that sophomore year, you go 139.0 in the 200 freestyle. And at that time, only the Bailey brothers in the state of Michigan had ever been faster. And they were both seniors when they did it. So, you may not have realized you were doing this at the time, but there had never been an underclassman as fast as you at that time. I mean, there really had only been seniors at that time in the state of Michigan that had gone down there. You go 139.0, which, we just mentioned you were 42.9 the year before. It's almost a 4-second drop in that year, which is incredible, at that level. What happened that year that kind of helped you burst through?
So it's funny because I probably evaluate it differently now. I do think that in a certain sense, I probably came out of freshman year state meet sort of shot out of a cannon. Like I said, realizing, the sort of whole framework on which I was sort of viewing my career, it just shifted. The whole paradigm shifted. How I approached it, what I thought I was capable of shifted completely. So I think that was just a part of it. Mentally, I was in a different place than I was before. I don't know how much I grew between my freshman and sophomore years, but I remember I was always pretty small relative to everyone. I felt like, but I was certainly, like, my freshman year, I was a small freshman. I just don't remember how much size I put on, but you're right. My junior year wasn't great. I think my junior year I was sick. I blew it. I never took time off because I wasn't willing to do it. I should have just taken 2 weeks out of the water and knocked it out of just knocked this thing out. And I dragged breaks. Basically, I think I had bronchitis, and I dragged it from November all the way through. It never even cleared, even at state meet. I just never let it, clear. And so that kind of hung over me that whole year. But one of the things Mike did with all of us, and really trained around very religiously, was setting goal times and setting sort of knowing exactly how you were going to do it. And so, again, as I said, I'd never trained this way with anyone else, and never after, but we would do sort of broken ideal swims. So if I wanted to, I don't remember times, but whatever I wanted to go. So if I went 139.0 at state meet, I guarantee you that was within 0.2 of a second of my goal time. And I had done that exact swim 50 times in practice, where we would start from a block, finish at a turn, and stop at the 50. And I forget how long he'd have us rest, but you'd rest for 15, 20, 30 seconds, and you would swim the next 50 and go your pace to the feet. You'd do it again, and then you'd finish. And so I had swum that race 50 times, going exactly. And if you went too fast, you were in trouble. If you went too slow, you're in trouble. But not in trouble, but the point was swim your race. So, like, when I won 139.0, that was 100% what I had mapped out. In fact, I remember, it may have been my freshman year. No, it wasn't. One of my years, I remember, because I would have them written down and by the splits. And I remember in prelims at one state meet, I sort of beat my goal time by like 2 or 3 tenths. And the first thing I did when I got back to the hotel is figure out mentally, okay, what do I want my goal time to be? How am I going to split it? I'm going to write it down and start working on that, like, for tomorrow. It was just so drilled into us that that's how we approached it. So, for Mike, that was 100% how he trained us. And, like, if I guarantee you, if I want 139.0, my goal time had to have been between 39.2. It probably wasn't 38.8, because I would have been really angry if I hadn't done it. I don't know what the difference was, why I thought going into my sophomore year that was a realistic goal time when I'd only gone 142 whatever the year before. But I clearly thought it was, and he trained me to think it was, and so I did it. That's kind of how it worked with him.
I mean, honestly, that's probably as great of a story and an anecdote about Mike Lane as I'm going to hear. Not only does it speak to, his race preparation and, in his training techniques, that's really good. Real quick, on the sophomore year before we move on, that's the last year you do the 500. And right. I really like that, historically, that 4:33 as a sophomore, that was a really, really good swim, for a guy that kind of recognized he wanted to go shorter. From that point forward, you showed that you had the ability to go longer.
I don't think I wanted to go shorter. I'd have to go back and look. I have a feeling, didn't I swim the 100 fly one of those years?
Your junior year, you swam the fly.
Okay. Yeah, so that was probably more, so I'm willing to bet what happened was we probably had a 500 swimmer who was on the cusp of making consols or finals. It didn't matter to me. I could swim a bunch of things. So rather than sort of me taking up a place that might knock him out of consoles or knock him out of finals, I picked an event we didn't have anyone. Rafi, I think, had the 50 and the 100, so I wasn't going to take those. So I don't remember 200 IM. Oh, yeah, we had guys. We didn't have a 100 flyer, I don't think. Maybe Sam had graduated. So I probably took an event that we, needed a chance to score points, and I wasn't sort of I wouldn't be blocking someone who was like on the cusp of maybe making it. So I suspect that's what happened. I have no idea why I swam the 100 free my senior year.
It worked out. It was fine.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't go back to the 500. I don't remember. But I think because I never really went back to the longer distances after that. I think part of it, I don't know. I don't ever, like with Mike, we never talked about, oh, this is going to help position you for college or anything like that. So it wasn't any conversation like that. It just may have been, yeah, I don't know where the 100 free came from now that I mention it, but it was good. I mean, it was fun. I had fun with it, but for me, that was like an all-out sprint. Yeah, I certainly never thought of myself. I always thought of myself, like if I ever talked to swimmers and they said, what did you swim? I would always say I was a middle distance freestyler, even though, I basically shifted to the 100 and 200 by the end of my career. But I always viewed myself mentally as like I never wanted to train. I never trained with the sprinters. Couldn't do it. I always had to train with the middle distance guys. College, obviously, you split into distance, middle distance, and sprint. But yeah, I never ever considered myself a sprinter and always thought of myself as a middle distance swimmer.